Hi, everyone. I don't like the way I waved. Sorry. Hi, everyone. I think that there are two different ways to conceive of sexual orientation, and that by distinguishing between these two ideas, we can clarify some things that tend to cause problems when we're talking about it. So the first way, and the one that I think is dominant in our culture, is to conceive of sexual orientation as modal. In philosophy, modality describes statements about possibility and necessity, something that might be the case or must be the case or that could not possibly be the case. For a really simple example, it must be true that 4 plus 4 equals 8. You couldn't possibly describe a world where that wouldn't be the case. It might be true that I have 4 children, but it couldn't possibly be true that I have negative 4 children. All of these are claims about what the world could, in principle, be like. Even if I do have 4 children, it just might have been otherwise. So I'm saying that a common way to understand sexual orientation is as similar to modality. My sexual orientation is defined by the group of people that I could be attracted to or could not be attracted to. And there's also an element of necessity. It doesn't make sense to say I'm bisexual, but I'm not attracted to any men or any women. It seems like I must be attracted to some people from each group for that label to be appropriate. Of course, it's not the case that sexual orientation is literally modal. If you are gay, then it might have been otherwise. You might have been straight in some other world. I just think that this is similar to the mode of reasoning that we use. And the other way to understand sexual orientation is as probabilistic. So my sexual orientation is not defined by some kind of hard prohibition on which people I could be attracted to. Rather, it's defined by who I'm likely to be attracted to and how likely I am to be attracted to them. So if I'm a man and I'm very likely to be attracted to some portion of men and I'm extremely unlikely to be attracted to any woman, then I would say that I'm gay. So a part of this difference is that different people seem to feel sexual orientation differently. Like in their own experience, it could feel like from the inside, it's impossible for me to be attracted to women, whereas other people do seem to experience it more probabilistically. Like maybe once in a blue moon, I'm attracted to a woman, but I don't really think I'm attracted to enough women or I'm attracted to women strongly enough that I could date one of them or I could be married to a woman, whereas I am attracted to enough men strongly enough that it seems likely that I will continue to date men and to be married to a man.
Is it okay if I interject?
Of course, yeah.
The goal is to find the description of orientation that maps on best to our experience of it. That's the goal of the question.
Yeah, I would say there are two different goals of working this out, or one of them is reflecting our experience, like having a theory that actually makes sense for most people, or which is flexible enough that some version of it can work for different people. So maybe I should go about my life continuing to describe sexual orientation in a modal way, and other people should use it in a more probabilistic way. I think some of it is also political. So I think there's a real possibility that everyone's sexual orientation is actually probabilistic, but that there's kind of a pressure toward maybe modalizing it. So in my own experience, I'm gay. I really think it's very, very unlikely that I would ever date or marry a woman. But I have on extremely rare occasions felt maybe very mild or kind of ambiguous attraction to a woman. And I kind of think of that as wires crossing, something just goes weird in my brain for a second. In those cases, I actually feel some anxiety. I feel the need to rationalize away the attraction because at this point, I've identified as gay for many years and it is a part of my identity. And it feels kind of threatening to think that I might be forced to identify in some different way, to identify as bisexual, especially when for practical purposes, that label doesn't seem to apply to me at all. So I think that anxiety is just pretty much irrational. Obviously, it's not really important whether I'm a Kinsey 6 or a Kinsey 5.99. It really doesn't matter. But I think it does matter to a lot of people. If you go online and if you look at queer parts of the internet, people sometimes will spend a lot of time really angrily arguing about for example, what it means to be a lesbian or bisexual and whether different people can count. And I think people perceive that if somebody else identifies with this term in a way that is not intuitive for me or that doesn't match my mental concept, it's a threat to me. Like, I really have an emotional need for people to use these terms in the same way that I do. Yeah, so I think part of this is I want to think this through in a way that will be helpful for people to like relieve that kind of anxiety. Like, are you thinking of your sexual orientation as modal? Is that causing you stress? Do you need to think of it in that way? Would you be better off thinking of it as more probabilistic? Like, okay, maybe I previously thought there was 100% probability that if I'm attracted to someone, then that person is a man or looks like a man or is like not very feminine or whatever is true of you. And now I think there's like a 99.8% chance that that's true. Or is it the gigantic shift from could not possibly be attracted to women and that impossibility is a part of my identity, and now I have to say that it's possible, and that puts me in a totally different group of people who are actually dating and married to women. So partly I think I am describing a difference between people. Like, I would say I generally do think of my sexual orientation as modal, and I was surprised when I talked to some people who experience theirs as more probabilistic. I think there's a possibility that I am simply wrong. I think there's a possibility that we should all think of this in more probabilistic terms and be less interested in purity. So, I don't know, queer people will sometimes make fun of straight people and especially straight men for being anxious about experiencing some attraction to people of the same sex, possibly, or like thinking that they might experience it. People will blame that kind of emotion on homophobia, or they'll make fun of people for being paranoid. There are nicer and meaner versions of it. I would say a lot of this is like fairly harmless, if not ideal. So, okay, if I've gone through my whole life, let's say I'm a straight man, and I've always only been attracted to women. I've been super interested in women. I've had multiple girlfriends for the long term. I want to have a wife someday. And then I like think that a guy in a movie is kind of hot for like a period of a few seconds. That's really not a big deal. That's like very, very little evidence for the idea that like I should identify as bisexual or, might start dating men and I might marry a man. It's really, really meager evidence that this should shape my social identity. But if I'm operating under the sense of modality, then it could be evidence that I am in the possibly attracted to men group. So in that way, I think modal thinking kind of pushes us to worry about purity. When we make fun of straight people for having those anxieties, we just overlook, first of all, that I think most queer people did go through a period of being anxious and like really not wanting to be gay or bisexual or whatever. Most of us, I think, were pretty anxious at some point. Maybe that's changing now. Like maybe most people who are realizing as teenagers nowadays are like more immediately cool with it. I'm not sure to what extent that is true. But I think certainly most people my age, and even more so people who are older than me, did have some kind of denial stage. So there's that. Like, even if it is in some sense homophobic, it's not like culpable homophobia. It's not bigotry. And the other thing, though, is that we actually currently feel the same way. Like, a lot of us do feel threatened if we maybe experience pressure to identify as bisexual rather than gay because of just like a one-off attraction. Like, I'm not sure exactly how common that is. I might be in the minority, but I really don't think it's just me. We have ideas like a gold star gay describes a person who has only ever been with the same sex. And a lot of people criticize that term. I agree with the criticism. I think that it makes people feel bad if like they are gay, but they identified as straight for like a long time or something. But the fact that we care about this at all, I think is evidence that purity becomes a part of our identities. And that's fraught in all kinds of ways. It invites us to like be kind of unkind to people who are less pure than us. It invites us to feel anxious if we perceive any kind of problem or any kind of inconsistency between our experiences and the way that we identify ourselves. So I'm advocating basically for more flexibility, maybe more probabilistic reasoning about who we are or could be attracted to, where instead of thinking I belong in this fixed group and could never possibly change, it's more like I'm accumulating evidence for different views about who I could be attracted to, who I could have sex with, who I might eventually be able to get married to. So to try to summarize this quickly, there are two ways to understand sexual orientation. One of them is sort of rules-based, and it's about who you could or couldn't possibly be attracted to. Another approach is probabilistic. You think about how likely am I to be attracted to a person like this or that, and then you afterward you choose a label that seems to describe yourself well based on those experiences and based on that prediction that you're making. And I think that the modal view is more popular, but that the probabilistic one should become more popular.
Nice.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah, awesome.